The moment this story broke, it didn't just whisper through the headlines. It detonated. A controlled explosion of secrets, accusations, and something far more dangerous. Patterns that were hiding in plain sight all along. Because this isn't just about a prince, it's about a transformation so drastic, so unsettling that even the inner circle of the monarchy is now asking a question no one ever thought they'd dare to say out loud. What if Prince Harry is no longer acting on his own will? At exactly 9:48 a.m., the narrative shifted. Not slowly, not subtly. It cracked open, and suddenly, a name started echoing louder than ever. Tom Bower. Not a gossip blogger, not a random commentator. An investigative author with a reputation for tearing apart carefully built illusions. And this time, his target wasn't just a scandal. It was the entire structure of the royal family itself. His dossier didn't just raise eyebrows, it raised alarms, because what he describes isn't a love story, it's not even a rebellion, it's something colder, more calculated, a shift so precise it almost feels engineered. According to his sources, what happened behind palace walls wasn't emotional chaos, it was strategic rewiring, a slow, methodical unraveling of a man the world thought it knew. Think about the Harry people, remember, the laughing soldier, the reckless but lovable royal, the one who felt real in a family that often didn't. Now compare that image to the version described in these accounts. A man distant, resentful, almost disconnected, not just from the monarchy, from himself. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the whispers didn't come from tabloids. They came from inside. Conversations allegedly happening behind closed doors, where Queen Camilla herself is said to have expressed something chilling, that the change in Harry wasn't natural, that it felt imposed, like watching someone slowly disappear and be replaced in real time, not influenced, not persuaded, brainwashed. Let that word sit for a second, because if that claim holds even a fraction of truth, then this isn't a family dispute anymore. It's psychological warfare at the highest level of power. And suddenly, every decision Harry has made starts looking different. Every interview, every accusation, every bridge burned. Was it anger or was it guidance? And then comes the silence. No denial, no strong rebuttal, no immediate defense from Buckingham Palace. And in royal language, silence doesn't mean nothing. It means everything. It's the kind of silence that doesn't calm the storm. It confirms there is one. But here's where the story takes a sharper turn, because according to this investigation, the shift didn't happen overnight. It followed a pattern, a blueprint. It allegedly began with something deceptively simple: understanding, studying, positioning. 3 words that don't sound dangerous until you connect them. Google, research, control. Harry carried. His grief, his distrust of the press, his need for emotional protection wasn't just noticed, but mapped. Because that's the claim, that before the world saw a romance, there was analysis, deep, intentional analysis. And once those emotional entry points were identified, the real strategy began, not by force, but by isolation disguised as protection. First, the friends faded, then the military circle, then the family itself, and suddenly, the only voice left in the room was one. Now ask yourself, was that coincidence or construction? Because as this alleged strategy unfolds, another layer appears, one that's even more unsettling. It's not just about Harry anymore, it's about the next generation. The future, the long game. Why would a couple obsessed with privacy begin securing digital identities for their children before they could even speak? Why create structures, archives, and records so early, unless the story isn't just being lived, it's being stored? The idea of a Montecito archive sounds almost harmless at first. A modern parent documenting memories. But look closer and it starts to feel less sentimental and more strategic. Diaries, emails, footage, every moment preserved, categorized, and potentially monetized. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Because what happens when those children grow up and inherit not just a story, but a narrative already written for them? And suddenly, this entire situation stops looking like a family fallout and starts looking like the creation of something else entirely. A parallel identity, a rival narrative, a different version of royalty, one not bound by tradition, but driven by attention, media, and long-term storytelling. And that's the real twist. Because while the palace operates in silence and legacy, something else is being built thousands of miles away, in full awareness of the future. So now the question isn't just what happened to Harry, just what happened. And just when you think the story couldn't spiral any deeper, it does. Because behind the emotional chaos, behind the psychological theories, behind the perfectly curated public image, there's something colder driving all of this. Money. Not just wealth, but pressure. Cracks. A system that looks glamorous on the outside but is quietly hemorrhaging from within. Because maintaining a royal lifestyle without royal backing isn't just expensive, it's suffocating. We're talking about a reality where just keeping the lights on in that California mansion reportedly burns through millions every single year. Security, staff, image, optics. It all adds up, fast. And when the major deals, the ones that were supposed to secure long-term dominance, start underperforming or quietly fading away, the pressure doesn't just increase, it explodes. And suddenly, everything begins to look different. Those public appearances, not just visibility, necessity. Those brand launches, not passion, survival. Because when a lifestyle brand floods the market with products that quietly sit unsold in warehouses, gathering dust instead of profit, it sends a signal. Not of success, but of miscalculation. And here's where the narrative gets uncomfortable again, because when desperation meets visibility, the strategy changes. It becomes louder, faster, a little more obvious. And that's exactly what critics are pointing at when they look at these so-called tours. The sudden global appearances, the staged engagements, the carefully timed movements across continents. Not diplomacy, exposure. Because if the brand isn't sustaining itself, then it has to be pushed, sold, amplified. And that's where things start crossing a line that even long-time observers didn't expect. High-priced events, paid appearances, access being monetized in ways that feel less like royalty and more like influence packaged for sale. And the public, they're noticing, because there's a difference between representing a legacy and renting one. But while all of this unfolds in plain sight, something far more strategic is happening behind the scenes. Quiet, calculated, and potentially devastating, because across the ocean, in the very institution this story keeps circling back to, patience is running out. Prince William isn't reacting emotionally anymore. He's observing, calculating, and according to what's being whispered, preparing. Not for reconciliation, for resolution. And this is where the entire situation shifts from personal drama to institutional warfare. Because if the monarchy decides to act, not symbolically but structurally, it changes everything. Titles, status, legitimacy. The very foundation of what gives the Sussex identity its weight. The brand is the title. Take that away. And what's left? If those three letters, HRH, disappear, the entire perception collapses overnight. No more official standing, no more inherited authority, just two individuals navigating a world where their biggest asset no longer exists, and suddenly, every paid event, every public appearance, every attempt to maintain relevance becomes harder, louder, less convincing, because aligning with figures already entangled in global scandals doesn't just damage perception, it amplifies it. But those alliances come at a cost, and in this case, that cost might be irreversible, because while all of this unfolds, the financial strain, the strategic pressure, the reputational risks, there's one final question hanging over everything like a shadow that refuses to move. What happens when the value runs out? Because if history has shown anything, it's patterns, relationships that begin with purpose, connections that serve a function, and once that function fades, so does the connection. And that's the question Tom Bower leaves lingering in the air like a warning no one wants to acknowledge. What happens when Harry is no longer the asset? When the titles are gone, the access is gone, the leverage is gone? What happens then? Because right now, he is the centerpiece, the connection, the bridge between worlds. But if that bridge collapses, where does he stand? Not in the monarchy, not fully in Hollywood, somewhere in between, with no clear way back. And maybe that's the most haunting part of this entire story, because it's not just about what's been lost, it's about what might still be taken. The remaining pages of his memoir that were never released, the private archives, the recordings, the diaries, the pieces of a story that haven't yet been told, but could be at any moment if the pressure demands it, a slow burn threat, a ticking clock. And as the world watches this unfold, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't over, not even close, because the financial strain, the institutional response, the buried secrets, and the shifting public sentiment are all moving toward one inevitable collision. And when that moment finally arrives, it won't just be a headline, it will be an ending, or something even worse.